Israel is not a Jewish state. It's a Zionist terrorist organization. And yeah, you read the title. You know exactly what this is going to be about. A quick hello and fuck you to all the liberals watching. I hope you foam at the fucking mouth over this shit. Now, real quick, because of my ADHD, sometimes I just forget to put the links to all my resources here. So the slides that I put up should have more than enough words for you to just be able to go look it up and find the stories. And I make sure to always provide enough information on that. First up, right? Israel is not a Jewish nation state. It's a Zionist terrorist organization that uses Judaism as a cover to hide behind while it commits crimes against humanity that it manages to still reduce into crimes of war. And even though crimes of war are bad, well, the purpose is pretty shady. You see, they reduce the severity of their crimes to crimes of war so that they can justify murdering men too. Men matter, people. You can't be mad at #AllMen movement and also not give a fuck about Palestinian men. It's conflicting ideologies. Specifically, that's called racism. And if you believe all Palestinians are Muslims, then you're racist twice and Islamophobic. So, yeah. But you know what? I want to make sure we're all on the same page here. This isn't how I do it, just talking. I like to show what I'm saying, so let's back up a little bit. Actually, let's take a look at a very brief timeline here. You see, oddly enough, in the 1880s, a man named William Heckler, I neither know nor care how to pronounce that name, by the way, created the Christian Zionist movement to help Jewish refugees and wrote a pamphlet titled The Restoration of Jews to Palestine According to the Prophets. And the book clearly justifies taking oppressed people, moving them to a new location, and having them oppress people now. Now, let me ask you something, because this has got me stumped. Is it normal to create a cause for something that doesn't yet exist? Because the term Zionism didn't come about until the next decade, 1897 to be exact, when Nathan Birnbaum decided to bring it to life. So, is it normal for the second thing that comes to be the purpose after the first thing was already created? But if we look at their purpose, the purpose didn't change, which is strange to me because one of the Jewish principles is not to covet worldly things like land. And I'm willing to bet that you're definitely not supposed to covet land that belongs to others and violently attack those people to take that land. You know what? It doesn't even matter. Right now, right here, we can see that Zionism has no claim to the land of Palestine other than nonsense religious text that does not give you authority in this world. And I'm not sorry. Harry Potter isn't real either. Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Beauty and the Beast, these are all made up and no religious text gets more credibility than any other title in that list. Religion was supposed to be a private thing, but some religions, looking at you, Christianity, seem to feel that they have this right, almost like manifested right, to annoy the fuck out of you with their incessant ongoings about a literal imaginary being. Bro, if I'm bagging on Potterheads, I'm also bagging on Bible thumpers. You get no special treatments around here. And before we leave the Jewish virtual library, I'd like to note this one last bit where they talk about expanding from violently stealing land through terrorism to violently defending what they've stolen through terrorism. We're going to come back and highlight this point. First, let's talk about how they stole the land in the first place. And that brings us to the conversation of the Havara Agreement. But let's talk about it in its complete context, shall we? You see, Nazi Germany didn't just happen. The German economy was deep in a depression, and German Jews had rallied a boycott that nearly collapsed the German government at the time. I dare say, without money, one cannot go on to fund a war. So, in comes the Havara Agreement, where Zionists decided to literally backdoor German Jews and the power of their protest. Germany was able to sell their goods to an outside market at a cut rate, by the way, and now, with this new outlet, Nazis could violently steal the wealth of German Jews and send it to this new place much too far away to be affected by the boycott. Zionists literally sold out German and European Jews in 1933, despite being told that that's what would happen. And what did they do with that laundered, stolen wealth? Nakba, where for nearly 2 years, they committed acts of terrorism that included assassinations of British and Palestinian officials, the brutal slaughter and massacre of children, the sexual assault of children, women, men, and the outright destruction of more than 530 villages and cities. They committed 70 massacres, which nearly rivals the US's white Christian fascist population throughout our history, and that's 250 years long. This happened within 2 years. Oh, and by the way, liberals were in charge of the US government from 1933 through to 1947 before they lost their political trifecta. They turned their backs on Palestinians during Nakba and the Jews during the Holocaust. The Nakba was funded by laundered, stolen German Jewish wealth, where most of the people the money was stolen from died in the Holocaust. Only those more than willing to come from a place where they were the victims of hate crimes to being the ones committing the hate crimes on others, even children and non-combatants, only those Jewish people, which are not Jewish people, they're Zionists, were willing to go to Palestine. But you see, Jewish people aren't afraid of death. They stand in their faith and their truth. For those that do not know, Jewish people's greatest truth is that when the day comes that we are judged, none of us will be judged based on how well we treat ourselves. We will be judged based on how well we treat others. And I don't know what to say other than there is nothing braver than standing your ground in the face of 6 million murders and refusing to treat people that way. I wholly, unquestionably stand with the people of Judaism. In that, I wholly, unquestionably stand against the people of Zionism. Zionism, based on what I've researched, is in its very nature anti-Semitism. It is the literal attempt to align Jewish people with people who would commit horrendous acts. You know what? You might be thinking I keep bringing up old shit, or maybe you don't know. Let me show you something. See, maybe you don't know that Zionist Israeli terrorists illegally abduct, torture, sexually assault, and murder Palestinian children, and then project those crimes onto Palestinians. Look, you don't have to believe me. Just take a look at this report on it. 14 cases in one setting that include children ages 13 to 16. Let's look at one of the events disclosed by a 15-year-old Palestinian boy together, shall we? A Zionist Israeli soldier decided to kidnap this child and torture him until he confessed to a crime that he never committed and definitely wouldn't deserve sexual assault and threats of a home being destroyed. This is who liberals out loud support, by the way. Now, what about this article from September 13, 2010, claiming that Zionist Israeli soldiers sexually abused Palestinian children? Remind me, what part of Judaism says to use sexual depravity in any way, but especially against children, as a means of, well, anything at all? The reason you can't point it out to me is because it doesn't exist. And if anyone went looking for the justification in Judaism to commit these sexual acts of barbaric savagery on children, then you're anti-Semitic. Jewish people don't torture children in any way, let alone like this. In this particular case, one Zionist Israeli soldier attempted to shove an object in the kid's bottom while other Zionists stood around laughing. And a reminder, liberals are in love with this shit. And if you think liberal politicians are unaware of this, then you're an incredibly naive and easy to manipulate person. So, probably a liberal voter? Liberal politicians definitely knew about this story from 2014. There's no way, with how much money we send Israel, that these politicians aren't at the least receiving these stories in email messages, text messages, and as questions from journalists. And that's wholly ignoring the briefings they receive all the time. This was a 14-year-old boy who, again, was kidnapped from his home by Israeli soldiers. You want me to shove this stick up your ass so you'll feel pain and tell me the truth? A grown Zionist Israeli terrorist said to a child. To a child. Yeah, liberal politicians absolutely knew about this shit. And liberal politicians definitely, without a doubt, zero questions left to ask, knew about this story from 19 February 2021. 2021. This is peak form sexual depravity and nothing else. It's fucking disgusting. Quick question, does anyone think all those conservatives claiming to care about the safety of children will ever say anything or do anything to protect these children? Likely not, considering many of them literally move out there to steal Palestinian land, so. Once again, Zionist Israeli terrorists kidnapped a child at night and took him to a, get this, Russian torture compound. And yes, for those who don't know, Zionists can be Russian too. Go ahead and look it up. I say as the person currently presenting you with information. Go look it up, suckers. Seriously, go look it up. Because right now, I want to talk about how they blindfolded and handcuffed this 15-year-old child in a hallway where every few minutes, someone, a grown adult, walked by and attacked him. This is fucking cruel, and they do it under these bullshit presumption that kids are throwing Molotov cocktails. I'm sorry, are Zionists fucking stupid? Are they absolutely fucking idiots? Throwing a Molotov cocktail leaves a mark, you dumb fucking rock monsters. I swear, if the US wasn't backing Zionist fascists, they would have just fucking died, just from stupidity. Oh, and Biden himself restated in 2022 that if Israel didn't already exist, we'd have to make an Israel. He even stated that it was based on our principles, our ideas, and our values. They're the same values. And if you know anything about the intention of Child Protective Services, then you know that family separation and child torture is a part of our government's policies to this very day in the US. So thank you, liberals, anti-black fucks. But for now, we need to get back to this child and what happened next when he was taken into a room with a Zionist Israeli interrogator. And that word clearly doesn't seem to mean what they think it means. This sick Zionist fuck beat a 15-year-old and then sexually assaulted him with an object. And he knew he was wrong because he told the kid that if the kid told his lawyer, then he'd do worse after the lawyer was gone. And then, after the kid saw his lawyer and said nothing, they fucking continue to torture the kid anyways. And again, I ask, show me the Jewish principle that supports this barbaric, savage, sexually depraved behavior. And this isn't a rare occurrence. According to this report from 2014, Zionists are sexually assaulting at least 40% of all Palestinian children who go through their system. And remember about how many were watching and laughing? Yeah, this is a fucking child predator cult. And according to this report from the 10th of July, 2023, Zionists are still sexually assaulting children. Please, for the sake of Palestinian children, do not vote blue ever again. Because voting blue also gets more Palestinian children tortured and used as human shields by Zionist Israeli terrorists. These two fascists didn't even get punished for their crimes against humanity. Sorry, liberals have everyone convinced that Israel and Palestine are at war. So if you're a liberal, this is a war crime and you're a dipshit coward who is too afraid to speak plain truths. Which is precisely why the behavior persists. When you fail to hold bad behavior accountable, others who want to behave that way will go out and push those boundaries even further. Which means when we let Zionists murder children, other Zionists are also going to murder children. And these are still children being kidnapped by Zionist Israeli terrorists, by the way. Children who would have likely been threatened with sexual torture if they wouldn't admit to throwing a Molotov cocktail had they not been killed here. The hard truth is, the moment these Zionist terrorists saw these children, they were at best going to be severely traumatized, and at worst, murdered by a Zionist. But will liberals ever go out and say a damn thing about any of this? Nope. They'll make up 40 children to excuse the murder of thousands more, but won't talk about any of these real children. Which explains why they'll also ignore the large number of sexual assaults on Palestinian women at the hands of Zionist Israeli terrorists. And I have to ask, dear #MeToo liberals, why don't these women matter? And liberals, why do we have to exchange the safety of people of color in the US for people of color outside the US? Don't you think that still seems pretty fascist and definitely racist? Also, isn't it a little extra racist to make people of color choose between people of color? What I do know is that this happened. Dude literally tweeted the words, "I took this hit right after I essayed a Palestinian lady." And we're going to take a look as to why he felt this was an okay response to being called a baby killer and child murderer. Shortly after this, dude died. So if karma existed, this would be that. But karma doesn't exist, and we know it doesn't because Zionist Israeli terrorists have been doing this for 74 years, and something they absolutely committed during Nakba, which makes it some 70, 80 years of sexual depravity and no karmatic response. And it's not something that's limited to lower ranking soldiers either. In 2012, this colonel, who was a rabbi designate, stated in an interview that the sexual assault of Palestinian women wasn't just okay, it was essential to keeping his men at peak fighting readiness. Specifically, when asked, is it allowed in our days for an IDF soldier, for example, to SA girls during a fight, or is such a thing forbidden? The response was, one of the most important and critical values during war is maintaining the Army's fighting ability. As in war, the prohibition against risking your life is broken for the benefit of others. So are the prohibitions against immorality. Just so, war removes some of the prohibitions on sexual relations, and even though fraternizing with a Gentile woman is a very serious matter, it was permitted during wartime under the specific terms, out of understanding for the hardship endured by the warriors. And since the success of the whole at war is our goal, the Torah permitted the individual to satisfy the evil urge under the conditions mentioned for the purpose of the success of the whole. So let me get this straight. Zionist Israel can't keep its army fighting without allowing them to sexually assault people, even children? Does that seem Jewish to y'all? Justifying this because you're risking your life for others is one of the most pathetic things you can say about your soldiers and the society they come from. Also, they aren't risking their lives for the people they're sexually assaulting. So to say that your soldiers sexually assault children for all of Israel, bruh. Fraternization implies both parties are interested. We're talking about sexual assault, not consensual adult hookups here. And dude said war removes some of the prohibitions on sexual relations. Sexual assault is not a fucking sexual relation, it's a sexual depravity. Then he says under specific terms. Can you tell us what these terms are? Is there a place we can review to know exactly what the terms are and if they include sexual assault and sexually assaulting children? The Torah permitted the individual to satisfy the evil urge. The Torah permitted people to sexually assault children? I find that hard to believe. And finally, you say under the conditions mentioned. You didn't mention any conditions. You literally just said under specific terms and said nothing else. Do you mean sexual assault? Can a Zionist Israeli fall in love with a Palestinian woman, or do you only authorize sexual assault? And remember that all that shit that he just said was an answer to, is it okay to sexually assault girls? But here's the super thrilling part of it all. He didn't just get to stay a rabbi. He also got promoted in 2016 to chief captain rabbi. Now, I wonder what kind of message that sent to the rest of the Zionist soldiers. I wonder if this encouraged them to change their ways or dig in their heels and send tweets about it. Which is probably why this is still ongoing. Reported on May 18, 2023, by the way. And here's a report from August 28, 2023, about a spike in Zionist Israelis murdering Palestinian children. And for those who didn't catch that, a spike means it's already happening. There's just a massive increase. And this was reported on the 28th of August. Remind me again, does the 28th of August come before or after the 7th of October? Because liberals keep saying that Israel has a right to defend itself, but it seems they expressly don't think Palestinians have a right to defend themselves. Now you can call me silly, but that seems pretty fucking racist to me. And it seems this rabbi wasn't an outlier or someone who went against the grain, more like someone who accidentally said the quiet part out loud and still got promoted. And again, liberals absolutely knew about this guy and said not a damn word to any of us. As a result, well, this report is from September 14, 2023. Again, pretty certain that's before October 7th, but I'll have to double check with someone who's a fucking idiot and struggles with a calendar, since it doesn't make sense to me that Israel gets to claim October 7th was out of nowhere. Hell, this is a story from November 8th of this year. That's a month after the counterattack by Hamas on October 7th. These sex-depraved Zionists are still using this tactic under full view of the world, which shouldn't surprise us considering how many innocent lives they've taken in response to Hamas responding to countless attacks by Zionist Israelis on innocent Palestinian people, especially children. And when an elected U.S. official, a Palestinian woman, spoke out in support of the very people being attacked by savage, barbaric, sex-depraved Zionist Israeli terrorists, Democrats moved fast to silence her voice and declare the statement from the river to the sea to be hate speech. Let me get this straight. The Star-Spangled Banner that literally uses hate speech isn't hate speech. But just half of the phrase from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, is hate speech. That's how liberalism works. They take a hope statement about being able to make your own decisions and be free from oppressive, brutal, sexually depraved force and turn it into hate speech. The level of Darvo being committed here by liberals. And remember, conservatives are red, liberals are blue. Both of them are fascists. How about you? Please, I am begging you to stop voting for red or blue candidates. It's time we do better by this world. This world has been far too patient with us. Know your vote. Ahudi Philistine. Free Palestine. Free Congo. Free Sudan.